Hey, everybody, I forgot the countdown clock, but that's okay. We're doing it live. And what we have today is myself and John's Comics with Kids. We're going to be figuring out how to fix the DCEU, which, if you didn't know, it's been pretty broken for a while. They have more bad movies than good, and I'm pretty sure John would agree with me. But let's just ask him, what do you think?
Yes, you are totally correct. You are totally correct. They've been hurting, but thankfully you and I were here to fix it all. We'll
got
fix this whole thing.
Yeah, we have an inside in case you people didn't know.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be fixed now. So anyway, we don't have very many people watching us at the moment, but we do have Shiny, Las Cruces, 1971, and Ben Compton. So what's going on, fellas?
What's up, Big Ben?
Yeah. All right. So I think we have to start from a foundation. We need a good place of agreement here to actually start this thing. So would you agree or disagree with the statement DC in general has done such a bad job at trying to make an interconnected universe like their competition that they just need to call a press conference, say, hey, we're doing a hard reset. These movies coming out, they're Elseworlds. Everything that you've seen is Elseworlds, starting with movie X forward. This is our universe, the DCCU, the DCMU, whatever they want to call it. I don't know. Would you agree?
I would definitely say they need to be – a press conference is fully needed. I think they need to be super clear about the direction that they're heading and about what their goals are. I think they're already canceling movies, right? So they're clearly shuffling the deck, but I feel like this happens a lot. And some stuff sticks around, like, hey, that Wonder Woman movie made money, so let's make more of those. And other stuff gets shuffled away and gets lost.
Yeah. And then you have 1984, and they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't make more of those.
Right. It's all, but they've already announced and signed, although who knows, that could change in a hot second. So but they've signed the director for a third film, so Patty Jenkins is supposed to make a third.
So you agree then that we need a hard reset and just go forward from here. Everything else, just call it Elseworlds. That'll work.
And ultimately, isn't that what they've been doing? I mean, let's just look at even the Batman movies that some people love, Keaton and then Kilmer and then the Nolan films. Aren't those all just each one set in its own universe? I mean, in my opinion, they've been doing it with Batman for decades.
Yeah.
Every single Batman where they get a new actor in has a completely different tone and a different style and a different look that implies, Elseworlds.
Yeah. So the first before we talk about how we would try and fix it, we need to figure out, of the actors and actresses that have been in them so far, is there anyone that you would bring over and say, hey, you did a good job, we're going to use you at moving forward? Who would you bring over, if anyone?
It's tricky, and I would the hottest take I could give you is that I only truly believe that Warner Brothers and DC have ever nailed one character, and it was when Christopher Reeve played Superman back in the early days,
1978.
So my opinion is that you could easily argue that nobody's been driving the ship since that first film. And even in that first film, because they were trying to fire the director all through the making of that movie. So you could argue Warner Brothers has had no real concept of what their property is and could be. If you're zip forward to Snyder era, I think there's really only two performers who I feel like have locked in on what that character could be. And that would be...
Before you answer that...
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just want to tell you, I honestly don't care if any of them move forward or if all of them move forward, except for a few characters. I think, good director, good script, they'll work. But my favorites are Zach Levi. I actually enjoyed Shazam. Jason Momoa, Henry Cavill, and Gal Gadot.
And
Those are
that's
the only ones. What do you think?
that's a solid set. And I would say I agree with all except Momoa, but I have plenty of frustrations with
leaving him as well.
I just feel like and again, you made the point, you commented script, right? And good director, good script. It brings to mind the James Bond universe for me. Where sometimes a great actor who looks perfect for Bond, Pierce Brosnan, gets the worst screenplays and the worst filmmakers, and they turn out the worst Bond movies. I mean, the last couple of Bond films that he did rank for me among the all-time worst Bond films. But if you were to line up all those actors in their heyday, you'd be like, that Pierce Brosnan guy looks like James Bond. Like, that's James Bond right there.
I think Pierce would have done – this has nothing to do with DC, but I think Pierce would have done better had he been able to quit the television show he was on in the 80s and do it then.
Right, the Timothy Dalton films, basically, that were destined for him, but somehow went the other direction. But it's similar to me here, where you have actors who could probably nail the role given the right writer and director, but maybe they just haven't gotten that overwatching eye like they were supposed to. So for me, it would basically be two.
Okay.
I do believe firmly that you're going to have a hard time finding a better actor for Superman than Henry Cavill. I really think
agree with that.
He looks perfect in the role. He has a ton of range as an actor and can do a lot with his face. He exudes kindness. Like it comes off of him.
The perfect age for me will be to get an actor and actress to do these roles that are currently about 35, because that means they could realistically probably do 20 years, not a movie every year, but 20 years worth of being that character.
Right.
Henry Cavill is 37.
So he's in the sweet spot.
How good a shape he's in, I think he'd be okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, Henry Cavill is always my first pick from this Snyder era of an actor who I think should conceivably stick around and could adapt to another director's vision or another producer's vision and go in another way. And then Gal would probably be my second pick. I think
she is literally 35.
And she also exudes a lot of those same qualities. Now, I know a lot of people get on her acting ability and her ability. I don't see the negatives that others do.
Wonder Woman is supposed to be beautiful and a hardened warrior. I think she gets both of those down pretty good.
She does. And I think even in the flawed second film, she hit on the qualities that I think are deeper inside of Wonder Woman, which is empathy. And she really was able to hit that note well for me.
She was not the problem in that movie. What the script and director made the story do was the problem.
Absolutely. Now, I love Zachary Levi, and I would have no problem if he stuck around.
I don't.
I think he definitely works in that role.
He's 40 years old. I don't know if he'd be able to do it or not. And most people didn't really seem to like that movie,
which is weird to me because it's my second favorite. It's Wonder Woman #1 and Shazam are the two.
I'm taking or leaving. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
And Jason Momoa, he's 41, believe it or not.
Man.
So
I wished I looked like that when I was 41, but not going to happen.
So I think he would be okay to replace. And I think I would agree with that. Just bring those two over. Because
if you could keep anybody. I mean, the truth is, like you're saying, hard reset could allow for a ton of options.
True. But you also can't be thinking things like, hey, let's have an older Batman, Ben Affleck. He's 48 years old.
I think
the Batman
I think old Batman with young Superman is very confusing to me because, I mean, you could get into the flaws of the Snyderverse, but for me, the core of the Snyderverse problem is he wanted to take the Dark Knight Returns universe and expand it to be all of DC and make it like. And what works about Dark Knight Returns is it feels like an alternative possible end future. Yeah, but it's not true to those characters at their core. Frank Miller definitely took a ton of liberties.
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of the Zack Snyder fans will hate me for this. But when you compare Zack Snyder's Justice League with Joss's version, it's an amazing piece of cinematic brilliance. But only when you compare it to Josh's version.
But it's
There's still
like
a lot of issues with the movie, and it does not rank in my top 10.
But it's like the semi-attractive man standing next to the really ugly man, and you're like, well, okay,
Yeah.
he looks a lot better, But then you
But-
separate him out and just look at him one-on-one, and you're like, okay, well, yeah, he's just
the
normal.
bigger problems is you go back further, like Batman v Superman.
Okay.
They tried to throw way too much crap in that, and
Obviously.
they also.
But for me, the core problem is wanting to take Dark Knight Returns and expand it out to encompass the entire DC
they
universe.
took that to throw it in. Then we also had Lex Luthor in there for.
But I mean,
then we also had, Doomsday.
But I mean, what they're really doing though with all of those movies, Man of Steel on even, is trying to say, hey, what Frank Miller said in Dark Knight Returns is true of the whole universe.
And that really does not work with
Batman's
Superman.
a hardcore killer.
Yeah.
Superman's going to become this this evil government henchman. Lex Luthor's going to become president.
He's a good movie. The idea was okay, except the big flaw that has continued on from Zack Snyder's movies was Superman doesn't have a good moral center. Like his dad's, should I have let him die? Well, maybe. What?
Well, and again, it goes to Dark Knight Returns has a Superman who is lost morally. And I think Snyder wanted to take Zack Snyder's Superman. I'm sorry, he wanted to take Miller's Superman and paint him as that is who he is truly to his core. And Frank Miller hated Superman. Frank Miller did not like Superman. And so to take that to its core means that we have a Superman that is clearly that Snyder loathes in many ways. And so, even when he is like supposed to be at his best at the end of Justice League, he is like beating and torturing a prisoner of war. Like he beats Steppenwolf and then decides to mutilate him and throw him out so Wonder Woman can chop his head off. Like, we already beat this guy. Why are we murdering the guy that we just beat?
Well, I can understand why Wonder Woman chopped his head off, but
I firmly disagree, because if you look at the only time she's ever done that kind of thing before, she did it to a guy she couldn't stop. She didn't do it just because, like, oh, I already beat you. Now I'm gonna cut your freaking head off. Like, she is not a stone cold just murderer. Like, if she's got a guy in handcuffs that she's beat and she doesn't like him, she's not just gonna cut his head off. That's not Diana.
Well, yeah,
they had beaten him. Superman had pummeled him into the earth and then chopped off part of the guy's freaking head.
Yeah, but
then they're like, he could come. We got to kill this guy.
But he could also come back, and that you could say that was a wartime. So I can understand it. I mean, I'm not saying yes or no to it.
So, anyways, I think making the Dark Knight Returns the heartbeat or the centerpiece of an entire DC universe is a flawed design. Yeah, and that permeates out into everything. So and people call it dark, but it's not really dark. It's just alternative.
Yeah. So how do we fix it? I wrote out a little outline of how I would try and go at it. How about you?
I did not write anything. I've thought about it a ton.
All right. Well, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? And feel free to interject with anything.
Yeah, I think we'll go back and forth a little bit here.
All right.
I would say my main concept is, I think it comes down to two things, right? You have an overarching vision, that Kevin Feige kind of person, and then you have talented individuals working on individual movies. And it's a matter of kind of how does that combine? I think personally, I would walk into the pitch meeting with Warner Brothers and say, you guys have learned all the wrong lessons from Marvel, and you don't want to emulate their formula. That would be my pitch. What made their thing works for Marvel. It doesn't work for you. And what you should learn from them is that they took an original concept that fit their universe and used it. You need to do the same thing here. And your universe, it works beautifully with interconnected multiverse Elseworld storytelling. And you don't want to do lots of solo films that build to a Justice League movie. Like, that is a crappy idea that is boring and it does not serve your universe. So my overarching view is that what you have is very loose connections between films, very loose connections, very unusual styles of stories, and multiple actors playing the same parts. So you could connect a Nolan verse and a Batfleck and a Michael Keaton Batman by allowing the possibility that you're telling a story like Nightfall, one movie, and you're telling a movie, you're doing a Red Sun movie, and you're doing a Blackest Night or whatever. And what I would build to my final film would be like an Infinite Crisis where the multiverse starts to crumble apart. And I would make as my connective tendrils Flash characters and Booster Gold. And those time travel multiverse characters would be the ones bridging the gap. And the only actors you would need to hire for multiple films who would need to appear, they would be my Nick Fury, right? They would be that kind of character who we see build. And little by little, you get to their solo films where you see why they've been popping up everywhere and what their connections are. And why do we have a Henry Cavill Superman over here? And then, you've got the guy on the Superman and Lois show that they're doing right now. And you've got, because this is a broad spectrum view, and you could pull in an older, what's his name from Smallville to play Red Sun Superman. Now he's older and he's living in Mother Russia, right? You could do these kinds of things where you're not strictly stuck to the Marvel template, which I think is flawed for DC. But that's me.
I agree that it does not need to be where every film has people from other films in it. I agree it needs to be a bit looser because that's just DC. I mean,
right,
rather than Marvel. But I think I would disagree on having the multiverse thing. I would just do the hard reset and just restart, have everything be Elseworlds that came before. And I would start off with, have you ever read the script or saw a YouTube video that read the script of the 2006 or so Justice League movie they were going to do with George Miller, but they never did it?
I think I've heard about it, but I never saw it. Yeah, Tom Welling. Thank you, Shop. Yeah. I appreciate it, man.
But okay, well, that actually sounds like a really good story. And I would start off with a Justice League movie. And the way I would do it would be starting off taking a lot from that film that never came, which is you're combining Tower of Babel, OMAC with Maxwell Lord. And they started off with you see Batman. Everyone knows Batman. We don't have to worry about
the origin story. I don't want to see the pearl necklace again.
And then we have on screen, he's looking at all the heroes. And once a hero comes up, because he's using the Brother Eye satellite, and it comes up, Superman, code name, real name, Clark Kent, weaknesses, powers, right there, except for the actual character, everything you need to know about each member of the league. And then things start happening. The Tower of Babel story starts where someone has gotten into Brother Eye and knows the weaknesses, and they have to join together to stop it. Like Batman goes to and this is the first time they ever meet together. And that's how they work together to find out what's going on and stop the Tower of Babel stuff. And then about the time that's done, because Batman's been focused on it, means that Maxwell Lord can take over Brother Eye, use the OMACs to get, start turning people into the OMAC machines and cause mischief and whatnot. And then they have to go and fight the OMACs. And Maxwell Lord, of course, in true fashion, Wonder Woman gets him lasso of truth. Hey, you got to kill me, otherwise Superman's going to kill everyone else, and the snap happens, their version of the snap. And then that's the end of that film. And then in between whatever the next big film is, you have the solo movies, sort of doing backwards of Marvel. And I wouldn't do necessarily an origin film for every one of them either, because we all know Superman's origin. We all know Batman's origin. We've got it. Okay. And I would have Superman land in Kansas in around 1950. because Superman doesn't age like regular people, and have him become Superman in 1978 when the original movies came out, just kind of as a nod. And then you have an old Superman rather than an older Batman. And then I would have Wonder Woman, because that was one of the first wars that was ever fought on the globe. We didn't really know if it was the enemy.
Right.
Pretty obvious, Nazis were the enemy. So Wonder Woman would come out. They hear stories of this beautiful angel of different wars throughout history, but she stays in the 70s. That's when she comes and she stays. And then Batman is born somewhere between 1978 and 1985. And then about 1982 to 1989, I'm throwing in the DC animated universe, using some cues from that as well, because that's the universe they got right.
You're true.
And there's this show that comes on called The Gray Ghost, aired from 1982 to 1989. It's really known for its special effects, but they're not actually special effects. It's the Martian Manhunter who is the actor, and everyone thinks it's effects. And he is sort of in hiding, but he will join the Justice League, in 2020 is when the Justice League, I'm thinking, has happened. Somewhere around 2020. Modern is all I'm saying with that. And then he came in 1947, the Roswell incident. We could say that was actually the Manhunter coming.
Sure.
And then Batman starts being Batman around 2005 or so. He's old enough. He's coming back. And then we would have Aquaman. I want to do his mother coming out in 1989 because of the Exxon Valdez spill in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And then 1990, Arthur Curry's born because she meets a man in Alaska, Prince William, the Currys.
Right.
And Flash would be really young, born like 99, something like that.
Okay.
And then the Green Lantern would come in because the OMAX and the satellites, they're making a big show that alerts the Green Lantern Corps, and they send this guy who has officially been trained, who is of Earth, in 2020 to help with the Justice League. And he went missing fighting in, Iraq or Afghanistan, one of them. That's where we pull him out. He goes missing because he's being trained on OA and whatnot.
Nice.
And he comes back in 2020. And that's the basic gist of how I envision it going down. What do you think?
That's hilarious. I love it, man.
Yeah.
He says, Kevin Feige. Honestly, they do need somebody like that. I think but somebody with the same passion for DC lore. I feel like anytime they're emulating what MCU has done, it's a flawed premise, and what the lessons they're learning are the wrong ones, and they're looking at the money and they're thinking, oh, okay, well, let's follow that formula. And I feel like that formula. What made the formula work for Marvel is it was risky, and they were trying risky things, both in casting, in the way they made the films, and the cost they were spending to hire people for multiple movies and all these things. I just think they need to break that mold. I like the idea of doing a reverse version of that. I think it's very creative. I like connecting it to real world events. But for me, I want to shatter the real world thing. I don't want them connected to my world, because DC never really has been. It's always in cities that don't exist, Coast City and Central City and Metropolis and Gotham. And so I like the fractured universe as a better way to do it. And I love that I would get fully away. Personally, I get fully away from the big three. Like, just get away from them. I don't want a Batman, a Superman, or a Wonder Woman movie in the first few years. Like, get away from it. One thing Marvel proved is that you can create a property like Guardians of the Galaxy, which had zero connectivity to anything else they'd done before and no name cachet, and make it a box office bang because they had talented people behind it, pushing it in the right direction. So personally, the early films that I would go for are a Green Lantern Corps film. I would go for that for sure. I would want a Booster Gold Blue Beetle movie early on. I would want a Black Canary film early on. I would want a Mr. Miracle movie that then starts the New Gods universe. Like, I would want those kind of movies way before I would save a Justice League movie. I would almost put a Justice League movie like so far down the line that you just can't even see it in the telescope anymore. Like, I want them to realize their universe. It's the same thing that MCU did. They didn't start off with Spider-Man and Wolverine and all that stuff, right? Start off with some of those other guys that could be so much more interesting. Get away from those guys. Like, honestly, how many Batman reboots have we had? Like, how many Superman reboots have we had? I think it's time for them to go in another direction. Their universe is so vast, and they're just crapping it away.
I didn't mean in my breakdown that these would all be different movies. I mean, that's just how I would unfold the story.
Sure. No,
you don't have to have them as different movies. Like, the main movie out of all the characters I wrote down here that I would want to see would be the Martian Manhunter.
See, yeah, I think that's a wise decision, and I don't mean that
he's old, like Superman, but even more so.
Right.
So he could watch everything else unfold.
I think the best use of the big three in Snyder's films was Superman and Shazam. And that's exactly how I would use the big three for the first few years. You might hear talk about the Bat of Gotham, or you might see Superman on the news in the background, but you gotta expand that universe, in my opinion. And Marvel did it. Marvel was like, hey, we're gonna start with Iron Man. Nobody was a fan of Iron Man in mainstream movies. Everybody thought this is a stupid idea for a movie, and you're putting an old drug addict in the lead. Like, this is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
And again, it was because they nailed the vision for that character, and people came out and saw it. And I think you could do the same for a ton of other characters outside of the big three.
Martian Manhunter would be great at that, because before he has to leave his home and come to Earth, you could do stories about how the Green Lantern of this sector used to be a Martian or something. And you could tell stories like that. And then it could be in the past. Man, you got how many Wonder Woman stories could you do just because of how old she is? I mean, you could do the same thing with Martian Manhunter. And then
Bearded say I'm bashing DC. I'm promoting DC. What are you talking about? I'm championing the fact that their universe is broad and deep.
Neither could Guardians of the Galaxy. Neither could Iron Man.
They said it about Iron Man, Ant-Man. They said it about all those guys. I totally think the other characters could, if, again, it has to do with the person at the top having a real vision for the overall universe and hiring the right filmmakers with a passion for those characters. I mean, even Shazam was
a lot of their people are either really good with comics or really good with business. They need someone like Feige who is great with the business, but also is a true fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is they think that it's just the big three that we're selling here is foolhardy. I think a really well done Flash movie could be bigger than some of the other stuff they've been doing. And I would gear towards a Flash, a Green Lantern, Manhunter. Sure, I would veer towards that other stuff. Exactly. And Booster Gold's first solo film, Bearded, would be like the centerpiece of what I have in mind, where we're basically getting a realization that like all these universes coexist. And as we build towards a villain who is shattering that multiverse, characters like Booster Gold and Flash become centerpieces, because whether it's a Reverse Flash or whomever, that's who's scarring this universe, and it builds towards an Infinite Crisis experience.
Yeah, I would hold off on Flashpoint stuff.
No, not Flashpoint. Infinite Crisis.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying I would hold off on Flashpoint-like stuff, because that's your ace in the hole. If something happens that you could use. I would use the Booster Gold idea.
Booster is definitely the through line character I would want. But then after you have the Crisis event movies, it sets up the vision for a universe that's a little more solidified, where you would need a Justice League. And then that movie would end with the formation of that team for me.
Well,
a version of that team.
it sounds like you're giving the setup, and I'm sort of talking about the punchline down the road, is what it sounds like to me.
I want my vision for the DC universe is a very fractured one, where I could come to the theater one day and I could see that Zack Snyder dark multiverse future film, a film of that, and know that it's like, hey, Ben Affleck's Batman in this one. And then I go to the theater the next day and there's a Robert Pattinson Batman film that's like Batman Year One kind of a thing. And I don't need the same actor to be in every film. And I don't need them to be dropping money on more Batman, Superman movies. I could easily go and see a Flash played by Ezra Miller, although I really don't like that actor.
All we really need...
I could bip around. Oh, yeah, Hawkman.
Hawkman would be great. What we really need is a clear direction. Like I said at the beginning, press conference. This is Elseworld. This is the main universe. You know, they need to let us know what they're doing.
Hello, Kenneth Bird.
You know?
And yeah, who dat? I agree. Booster Gold could be the Iron Man of DC. I think he's just as flawed, just as funny, and could be just as like central to what they want to do as a story. And I think that's where they need to go, away from just the typical Trinity stuff.
Final Crisis where Booster wanted to say, you know, goodbye to his friend Blue Beetle while he was dying and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't actually help you." And then he went away after he died.
I think so.
That's the Booster Gold we need.
Exactly. And I think if you make him this little connective piece where you're doing your individual movies, you do your Green Lantern film, you do your Manhunter film, but like there's this little like fracturing of the multiverse happening because there's a mastermind behind the scene, a Reverse Flash or whomever who is fracturing the multiverse.
You only need them to connect when you're doing a connected movie like Justice League, or if it would take too much out of the moment thinking to say that they don't meet. Like if Martian Manhunter goes to Metropolis, you're going to at least need to see some people talking about Superman, if not.
But that gives you the opportunity to have like a Lois Lane cameo. I would avoid the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman cameos in lieu of fun other cameos.
It would not make sense for Manhunter to be in Gotham or Metropolis and not have anything said about the others. But if he goes, you know, to Denver, okay. You don't need to connect it with anything. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you could and you explain away where is Superman? Why isn't he helping with those kind of cameo things? Like, hey, there's a news reel of Superman's fighting Starro at the bottom, you know, in the Atlantic somewhere, and that's what he's fighting. He's doing that, and our story is not about that. I go back to the idea that I think Shazam used a Superman cameo perfectly. It was a beautiful little moment that was like background stuff, and it was not right front and center. And then you build to that universe where it's all disparate, and you have a Superman movie with Henry Cavill, and then you got a Superman movie with Tom Welling, and once that universe is designed where you saw them all come together, all like 3 versions of Superman and 3 versions of Batman, then when that storyline ends, you're free to go buck wild in this universe. Bring on Red Sun Superman, you know, bring on all these crazy things that people can like, because the goal for me would be to have a universe where genre doesn't play a factor. We are not making superhero movies. We make the Booster Gold time travel road trip movie that's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Saying basically take everything that is and was currently with the movies, say they all exist in different realities.
Yes.
Then we're going to destroy all realities and start a new reality,
and keep whatever we
Elseworld movies,
and keep whatever we want. You know, keep whatever we want. Imagine like a big cross multiverse movie where there's Val Kilmer's Batman running through running across a rooftop, and Michael Keaton's old man Bruce Wayne at home talking to Batman Beyond, and you've got all these alternative visions happening simultaneously. I think it completely opens the floodgates and allows for all future standalones to be connected so loosely but truly. What's up, Captain? So that's my personal preference, and it works way better for DC than it ever would for Marvel.
Yeah.
Because Marvel has one
saying,
main continuity, that one main timeline, and even when they branch off a little bit, their goal is just to come all the way back to that main MCU timeline, right? Even Old Man Logan, they made this amazing alternative future Old Man Logan, and then they just plucked that character out and dropped him in the main timeline. They're like, no, we're going to stick to our continuity. So I feel like DC does not do that. They don't play continuity games.
Are you basically saying have a main line and then things that branch off?
I wouldn't even label. I wouldn't even really name one the main. I wouldn't even. I would just. They all share their own. They all have their own importance. The second you name one the main, then you're going to start like, that one doesn't really connect. That one's not really important. If at any moment a character could cross from one of those universes into the other, the flexibility of the universe becomes far more intriguing.
So you're saying there is no main timeline. You just have different universes and figure out a way to let someone from one come to the other and then go back.
Because there are so many DC characters, villains and heroes with that ability that could easily connect. It's not like Marvel where there's like, there's maybe 2 or 3 characters that could shatter. Like
name 5.
Name 5 at DC?
Yeah.
5 at DC? Well, obviously we've got Flash and any number. I mean, you could list like 10 Flash characters, I feel like.
Flash characters, okay.
All the Flash universe could break. Yeah. Villains and heroes could all break time, right? Booster Gold would be my next favorite. So those are my favorites. I would go with Dr. Fate. I think could absolutely shatter time. In fact, you could, if you want to say the magical universe, the Zatanna, that whole world could shatter the universe.
Would you consider Swamp Thing in the magical? Or is he kind of his own thing?
I mean, that's a wonderful question. I don't know. I don't know enough Swamp Thing to speak. I don't speak intelligently about anything, but to speak intelligently about Swamp Thing, I would struggle.
Hey, well, let's say that's 4. What's the 5th one then?
Oh, geez, man, I mean,
well, you said there's so many, so I'm like, okay.
I named groups that could
groups,
like. There's like 5 or 6 inside of Flash.
I think you beat yourself up there by naming them as groups, but the Flash, magic users. I mean, there's so many in just those 2.
I feel like the flexibility of those universes allows for a lot of options, especially when characters are learning how to use their powers. So it's not like our Flash would have the ability to go to the exact timeline and the exact multiverse he wanted to go.
All we really need is a viewpoint character, kind of like a Watcher,
which is for me the hilarity of Booster Gold. He is like this guy who knows and sees so much, but has very little control over what's going on, and ends up like causing as much chaos as he's trying to solve. And he becomes this, for me, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, they become this Bill and Ted traveling through the DCEU and trying to make fixes and trying to bring people together and make things happen. But we're really watching a Green Lantern movie, and these guys just come through at certain pivotal moments. And
I would love to have. What would be the big movie then? Would that be like they accidentally release, something that they shouldn't, and then Dr. Fate has to come help them out?
Yeah, I mean, you could build a bunch of different directions, and for me, it was an Infinite Crisis kind of thing where all these different Batman and Superman met. Again,
Infinite Crisis movie. Don't you need to hold off on someone as big as Darkseid?
Absolutely.
Like you use the other. If you're going to use New Genesis, you use Big Barda. They thought she was a villain at first. Use the Wunderbar. Use Granny Goodness. Use the
my vision of Darkseid is way down the line. Just like my vision of the Justice League.
He's at the end of like 15 years of movies.
Exactly. The Endgame Infinity War movie I would build towards would be the Infinite Crisis. And before then, it would be a ton of standalone or sequel films, right? Your second Green Lantern movie, your second
Final
Flash
Crisis.
movie.
You could have the first Crisis.
And that would be like and after that Infinity War Endgame movie, then you get them deciding that they need a Justice League. And the Justice League would happen after that stuff. And then you can get into a dark side who's now maybe coming to Earth because he's been having such attention drawn to it now. Which is, again, you're talking 20 years of movies before that.
Yeah. I want to see a question movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, why not go to the Bat universe and not focus on Bruce? Give me Black Canary, give me Nightwing, or give me Question, but get outside of the comfort zone of Bruce.
Yeah.
He can be a cameo. You want to have old Bruce Wayne come in and you bring in Michael Keaton in that particular universe, it's Michael Keaton. Go for it. But that doesn't stop you from having a Robert Pattinson Bat film with a different actor, a different tone.
And I could picture having a period movie in like the 70s, and then they cut out, and all of a sudden there's Christopher Reeve flying by.
I'm saying it allows for a flexibility in creativity that I think would be a lot of fun. And again, when instead of waiting for a Stan Lee cameo, right? You're really waiting for the Booster Gold cameo. All of a sudden Booster Gold crashes to a bus and he's like, no, darn it, I was looking for Wonder Woman. I got to get to the next.
I think.
And then when you do the Booster Gold movie, it's almost like you're stringing together all those scenes to make to realize what Booster Gold's been doing all along.
So basically, you need to have the Booster Gold movie written.
Basically, yeah.
And then actually do it in a decade.
And then over the course, you're shooting it while you're shooting all these other ones. But that's just me. I mean, I think it just could be a bucket of wild shenanigan fun.
That's totally different. We have given you a template to where that could happen.
And again, the template allows for the truth that all of these things exist.
But I don't know if I'd want him as the Riddler, though.
Well, he was at one point, but doesn't mean in another verse he wouldn't be the Joker or whatever.
Now, who do you think would be great for Booster Gold? It would have to be someone rather young. Like
it would.
Ezra Miller, if you're going to use Ezra Miller, that would be the role that'd be perfect for him.
Just get rid of him. I don't want to see him in.
I'm just talking age-wise. He's the only one that would be able to fit it. Because
I wouldn't keep
look at everyone they've had so far. Gal Gadot is 35. Henry Cavill's 37. Momoa's 41. Zach Levi's 40. Ray Fisher's 33. Jesse Eisenberg is 37. Affleck's 48. Amy Adams is 46. Jared Leto is the oldest at 49. And Margot Robbie's 30.
Right. I mean, it's a very tricky role. And I would say I would have wanted like a young Bill Murray or somebody, like a really young Saturday Night Live Bill Murray to be Booster for me. Somebody or a really, really young Paul Rudd, like a really young version of Paul Rudd. That's what I would be looking for. I don't know what you're talking about there. But I love Captain Comics. He has a great comment about the buffet. And I think a buffet is how I would look at the DC.
Zac Efron for Booster Gold. He could do the look.
Or a really young, again, I'm thinking of actors in their heyday. So like a young John Cusack. Like these are the.
That's all well and good, but we can't actually go back in time though.
But that's what they would be looking for. And so casting, I would not necessarily pick a huge name. I would pull script pages from like old John Cusack movies and have actors read them and just see if they have that.
They have to be able to be funny,
right,
and serious. And be young enough to play the role for a while.
Exactly, and it would be the Iron Man or whatever of the 20 movie run. But that again, that's my love. Again, it has everything I love, which is all the side characters in DC. All the Booster Gold I could possibly shovel in, and it allows for those Infinite Crisis films to be more about not a big bad, but how our characters are ruining the multiverse themselves. Like the villain is like how we have fractured time, right?
But at some point, though, I think just for confusion's sake, we will need something to be the main thing, though.
Of course.
At some point. And I think after the Booster Gold movie that you're talking about, whatever it would be called after a decade or so.
Right.
I think that would probably – wherever he is from, he's from the future of wherever, but that timeline that he's from the future of would be the main one. And then after all this decade of movies, we would know who do we want to be our main Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Manhunt, all that. We would know.
But again, I also think it allows them flexibility on money because they don't have to pay one actor for 10 movies. They're paying like this guy for one movie and this guy for one movie.
And then later on, if they do a good job,
a ton of Green Lanterns, right? Yeah. You got a Hal Jordan in one movie and you got a John Stewart in another movie and a Guy Gardner in another movie. And, you know,
Kyle Rayner in another, but we got 4 that are human.
Jessica Cruz. Oh, there's a bunch of ladies too. We haven't even started. Oh yeah, Jessica Cruz, Joe Mullen. Yeah. So all of a sudden, it allows for flexibility and money saving too, where you're not saying to somebody like Chris Evans, "Hey, you can't make other movies. You're going to be doing our movies for the next 10 years." You're like, "No, we'll need you for this movie, and then we'll talk."
Yeah, that would work. And that doesn't mean that if they just have to do a Batman movie after all this is said and done, they could do it however they want and say it's Elseworlds if it's after we've established what's the timeline. And if it's before, like you're saying, as long as you have that little piece of Booster or whatever to go in, you could do whatever you wanted.
How about Michael Cera as Booster Gold? That would be hilarious. I love Michael Cera.
That would be. I would watch that. So
awkward comedic timing and of course he was great in Scott Pilgrim. Like I think he would be hilarious. So again, a person of that ilk who is a modern John Cusack, of that 80s era. So yeah, I think my frustration with DC is that I think the executives at Warner Brothers think that there's 3 money-making characters, and they are only going to build a universe around those 3. And the reason that's weak thinking.
The reason and the truth is they don't even say characters is because they're the ones they keep making the movies about. Make a movie about Booster Gold or about the Question, and you can make them the money character.
Or let's hear about the idea that they made a really decent Justice League animated and a new Teen Titans Go animated, where little children have been watching Starfire and Raven and all these side characters. For Beast Boy, most of my students know who Beast Boy is. And you might say it's not a name brand, but kids would know exactly who they were going to see.
And there's also the Justice League Dark you could use. I don't mean do a Justice League Dark movie. I mean the characters. You could use the characters from that too.
I think there's far more branding than they realize, and all they do is they slap the big 3 on a lunchbox or a T-shirt, and that's what they know. And it's hilarious how many times my students come to school wearing like cool DC stuff, and there's no Wonder Woman because boys won't wear a girl on their shirt. And it's like, come on, you got a whole Justice League. You've even got like John Stewart on there, but you don't have a woman on there. Like, come on. So I feel like their marketing is very narrow and their vision of their product is very narrow. Sorry, Papa Wheelie. I'm obsessed with Booster Gold a little bit, but I think he's a cool character that people could really enjoy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't even have to use Booster Gold.
Flash could work in a similar capacity.
Yeah, I like the idea of Booster Gold, but if you just have to use one of the main 7, you could use a Flash. If you don't want to use either one of those, you could use a Dr. Fate or Dr. Manhattan even. But I think Warner Brothers would probably jack that up worse than
probably would.
We'll probably need to leave them alone.
The benefit of a Booster Gold is 1, there's nothing to ruin because there's no brand recognition. 2, you're not making him the lead in anything. You're using him like Stan Lee in the Marvel movies. Like he just has these little cameo moments that people don't quite understand, but they're just laughing at it because it's a little comedic or it's a little weird. And the main movie is
basically a big what if run, and the Watcher is Booster. Or Dr. Fate.
And you're still you're staying on brand because you're still making a Wonder Woman movie or you're still making a Green Lantern movie, and people know what those characters are. But you're setting something up so that when that Booster Gold movie comes, everybody's like clamoring for it. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy gets his own movie now? This is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
I get it.
So do you think they'll ever actually listen to people, though?
No.
Because, I mean, at some point, someone's got to slap somebody somewhere in Warner Brothers, and we'll get some good movies out here instead of them just. I mean,
I feel like executives in television and movies listen to the dollar bill, and that's pretty much it. They don't like a new idea. They don't like a different idea. And Kevin Feige took a lot of swings and was struggling. And thankfully, movies like Blade paved the way for our Iron Man.
It's odd to me that they say we want to do the movies the way they're doing them, but then you just turn your head at the MCU and you're like, who could have named any of the Guardians of the Galaxy before the movie? Who?
Right. Not only hardcore comic nerds could have done that. And now it's a full property, right? And now kids know who Star-Lord is. Like legit kids are like, oh, Star-Lord, he's cool. Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah.
As a kid, I knew who Rocket Raccoon was because I loved those comics. But
man, they're going to get so much mileage out of Bradley Cooper and that raccoon.
Groot, what kid knew who Groot was? But now every kid has a Groot toy, And I think DC has that same ability.
Yeah, they could probably do it even better than Marvel. As far as the caliber of characters, I like Marvel better overall. But as far as good characters that can stand on their own, DC has more. That's just a fact.
It's a bigger universe. It's a broader universe with more history and more options. I feel like Marvel is already looking ahead, thinking like, okay, we've kind of used a lot of our big storylines. What do we have? What do we have left?
Yeah.
And I think DC will never have that problem. And I think they could find a lot more success easily, but they've got to broaden their. Again, I feel like the people at the top have no understanding of their property. They just see 3 games, and they've got to just kind of like that's all we have.
Yeah, they need to find someone that can do the business side,
yes,
but also is a true fan of the books. That way, they have the middleman, so that he could
someone that the money men have faith
Guardians
in.
of the Galaxy happen. And then, hey, it was great. He was the buffer between the studio or Disney messing with it, and then, hey, it made money. So okay,
right.
And the hands off. That we need that buffer. I don't think we've had it yet, because Jeff Johns, he knew the books, but I don't think he was as good for business.
Yeah, and I think those money men have a lot of concerns, and they want somebody that speaks their language and is able to communicate with them. And then if they have that person they trust in, that person then is able to go hire the right creative people to make the individual movies. Because, Marvel went through several phases of having people oversee. And I think, whether it was Jon Favreau, who oversaw all the way through to the first Avengers movie, basically, and then Joss Whedon took over through the second Avengers film. And then you have the 2 guys who did Endgame, Infinity War. And the Russo brothers, they took over for a big chunk. And I think DC had hoped that was going to be Zack Snyder, but clearly he wasn't given the power or clout to do what he wanted completely. I think they're hoping it's going to be James Gunn, but I can almost promise you he's not going to be the guy that's able to pull that off.
Well,
I love James Gunn.
Marvel.
Yeah, but I think people are hoping that he's going to do more than one movie and that he's going to oversee DC. And I think he's just the wrong guy. But that's
he's the wrong guy, and I don't know about this Suicide Squad movie. The trailer looks great, but all trailers just about it look great.
I know
the first Suicide Squad movie had an awesome trailer.
I know they tried to talk Christopher Nolan into doing it, and he wasn't having it. And his style of filmmaking, anyways, doesn't fit with a broad DC vision of the world or the universe.
But
so
Zack Snyder, he's better at 300 was amazing.
Yep.
Watchmen was amazing. He is too dark, apparently, of a person in his thinking to do Superman really justice. Man of Steel was good, but just that moral foundation problem, that's a big problem. The Batman v Superman, the Martha, that's what gets them to stop. There are a lot of problems. And then, yes, he did better than Joss, but still.
Low bar.
Yeah.
Did you see that meme for Godzilla versus King Kong where it said they were fighting and all of a sudden he was like, save Mothra?
Yeah.
He's like, why did you say that name?
That's
hilarious.
Was a pretty good movie.
Save Mothra. I almost died. Like, oh my God, that's hilarious. But yeah, I think it also shows you how
Mhm.
rare a person Kevin Feige is, and how hard it was for him to get into a position to do what he's been doing. You know, he was working at Marvel for a long time, pumping out, trying to make movies. Both of those Hulk movies, his name was in the credits for both of those early Hulk movies. And obviously, most of us not big fans of those two Hulk movies. So
Well,
he had a
I'm
lot of
a heck of a
swing.
lot more of a fan for the second one than the first
Sure.
one.
But so he had a lot of swings and misses. And if it weren't for movies like Blade and ultimately the Iron Man film, he would not be where he is. And so he had to have enough success to prove, trust me, I got an idea here. And even then, after that, he still had Iron Man 2, which was a disaster of a movie.
You mean Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World?
I mean, but he oversaw Iron Man 2 as well, which I think is a crap movie. Green Arrow, yeah, I agree. I think the TV shows have a place in this all as well, and I think
I think it's going to wind up biting them if they include the TV shows as well. I think they just need to leave them be. Most of the time, I mean, most of those are on the CW anyway, and that's a specific kind of audience, the teen kind of audience that
I don't know that they need to
anymore.
But it doesn't mean that. But if they're doing multiverse, it doesn't mean that there's no place for it, is what I'm saying. Like, it opens a lot of flexible doors.
I know, you could say that they're there, but for the most part, though, I just let them be. I'm fairly confident that they're going to be dying out on the CW if they
possible. Now that HBO is the new home for everything.
Yeah.
But I will also say, for Papa Wheelie's sake, the challenge in making a movie with those actors is you're stuck doing the X-Files movie problem. You're either making a movie for the fans who've watched all the show, or you're making a movie for the people who've never seen any of it. And you're going to piss off the other group, most likely. And those X-Files movies, they've made 3 of them, and they were all a bit of a disaster because they were trying to walk a middle line there, where they were making the fans of the shows happy, but also making a mainstream movie that people who had never seen the show could enjoy. And there's so much baggage that comes along with it. But using a multiverse strategy where you're just having a movie and then, hey, there's Green Arrow in the background and he's blasting away at some guys and it's Stephen Amell. That's cool. Yeah. You don't need to tell a whole backstory thing to it. I don't know.
And
what's up, Jeff?
I think it would also be a good idea. I mean, doing the multiverse thing, like you mentioned, is fine. But using ideas from their animated universe for live action would be great too, because that is the thing that they have over Marvel.
Right.
I mean, I can name titles of episodes from Batman the Animated Series. I can't do that for anything Marvel.
That's hilarious.
I mean, well, you think we've sufficiently solved the problem, or?
Yeah, exactly. They just need to come to this show, watch what we're saying, and they'll all be good.
Well,
ooh, Bueller's here. What's up, Bueller?
May come to that. I don't know.
I mean, obviously their animation department's been like Big Will said, has been churning out bangers.
Yeah, well, we'll find out, I guess. Anyway, we could talk about this more, but I think an hour is pretty good for a show.
Right. Good for rewatchability.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for watching. I think we had up to like 12 people watching. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, John, for joining me. And Wednesday, I don't know the time yet. Whatever time I have scheduled is going to be changing. But I'm going to be talking with Houdat about proper investment for books, because a lot of people have been giving some bad information, we believe. So we're going to be going over some stuff. So see you guys later. Thanks again.